In November of 1987, a remote weather station known as Black Ridge sent out a final emergency transmission. The message lasted only 43 seconds, but according to investigators, the voices inside the recording belonged to people who had already disappeared 3 days earlier. Officially, Black Ridge Station never existed. There were no public records, no satellite images, no construction permits, and no explanation for what was discovered beneath the mountain after the storm finally cleared. But years later, fragments of the final transmission began appearing online again. And this time, listeners noticed something disturbing. A second voice could be heard beneath the static, a voice no one had noticed before. Black Ridge Station was built deep inside the northern mountains of Alaska in the early 1970s. Officially, it was a weather observation facility designed to monitor severe winter storms moving through the region. But according to former contractors, the station had another purpose entirely. The weather equipment was real, but it was only there to hide something much larger beneath the mountain. According to leaked testimony, massive underground tunnels had already existed below the site decades before construction even began. Nobody knew who built them, and nobody knew how deep they actually went. Some workers believed the tunnels were abandoned military bunkers left behind during the Cold War. Others believed the structures were far older. Several engineers reportedly refused to continue working after hearing strange sounds echoing through the lower levels late at night. Metal scraping noises, low vibrations coming from deep underground, and sometimes voices. At first, nobody took the reports seriously. The station continued operating normally for years. Then, during the winter of 1987, everything changed. On November 18th, a violent snowstorm hit the region surrounding Black Ridge Station. Wind speeds reached nearly 100 miles per hour. Visibility dropped to almost zero. Communication with nearby facilities became unstable. Emergency logs later recovered from the station showed normal activity during the first 2 days of the storm. Routine maintenance, weather reports, coffee deliveries between departments, small arguments between exhausted staff members trapped inside the facility. Nothing unusual. Until the morning of November 21st. At approximately 20:14 a.m., one engineer reported hearing voices through an inactive radio frequency. No signal source could be identified. The frequency appeared completely dead, but recordings captured faint speech repeating beneath the static. At first, the words were impossible to understand. Then, station staff slowed the audio down, and everything changed, because the voices were speaking English. Not only that, they were repeating conversations that had not happened yet. One technician reportedly heard his own voice describing a generator failure nearly 6 hours before the malfunction actually occurred. Another recording captured 2 crew members arguing about an evacuation order long before the conversation ever took place. Investigators later confirmed the exact dialogue happened the following morning word for word. Panic began spreading through the station. Several crew members demanded immediate evacuation. But the storm outside had become too dangerous. Road access was completely buried beneath snow. The station was trapped. That same night, security cameras inside the lower maintenance tunnel began malfunctioning. Recovered footage later showed brief moments of heavy distortion. Dark shapes appearing at the ends of hallways. Doors opening slowly by themselves. And once a human silhouette standing motionless directly outside the communications room. When security personnel searched the hallway moments later, nobody was there. As fear spread throughout the facility, staff members began refusing to enter the underground levels entirely, especially sublevel 6. Officially, sublevel 6 did not exist. No blueprints mentioned it. No maintenance records survived. But according to testimony recovered years later from a surviving contractor, the lower section contained massive radio equipment connected directly into the mountain itself. Nobody knew exactly what the machines were designed to detect. Several workers claimed the equipment had been active long before the station was ever completed. Others claimed the machines occasionally activated by themselves late at night. At approximately 11:47 p.m. on November 22nd, power fluctuations began spreading throughout the facility. Lights flickered constantly. Emergency alarms activated without cause. Several crew members reported hearing footsteps moving through ventilation shafts above their rooms. One technician claimed somebody knocked slowly against his locked door for nearly 15 minutes. When he finally opened it, the hallway outside was completely empty. Shortly after midnight, the station director ordered all personnel to avoid sublevel 6 entirely. No explanation was given. Minutes later, the final transmission began. The emergency message was transmitted across multiple military frequencies simultaneously. The recording was heavily damaged by static, but parts of it were eventually restored. The first voice belonged to station engineer Daniel Mercer. He sounded terrified. He repeatedly warned nearby facilities not to answer any incoming signals from Black Ridge. Then another voice interrupted him. A second man, calm, slow, almost emotionless. Investigators later discovered something horrifying. The second voice did not belong to anyone assigned to the station. In fact, voice analysis found no match anywhere in military records. Near the end of the transmission, alarms could be heard echoing through the background. Metal doors slamming shut, people screaming somewhere in the distance. And finally, one last sentence. Do not let it leave the tunnel. Then the broadcast ended. 3 days later, rescue teams finally reached Black Ridge Station after the storm cleared. The entire facility was silent. Generators were still running. Lights were still active. Hot coffee was reportedly found inside the main control room. But every staff member had vanished. No bodies were ever recovered. No signs of struggle were found. Security footage from the final night had been erased completely, except for a single corrupted frame recovered years later from a damaged backup drive. The image showed a dark hallway leading towards sublevel 6, and standing at the far end of the corridor was a figure. Tall, distorted, almost human, watching the camera. Investigators later discovered something even stranger. All clocks inside the station had stopped at exactly 1:33 a.m. Every clock except one. A single analog clock inside sublevel 6 was still running when rescue teams entered the lower tunnel. According to reports, the clock continued ticking even after being disconnected from the wall. The rescue teams were ordered to leave the area immediately. Several sections of the underground facility were sealed permanently using reinforced concrete. Military vehicles reportedly remained near the mountain for nearly 2 months afterward. Local pilots later claimed the restricted airspace surrounding Black Ridge remained active long after the official operation ended. Then came the disappearances. In the years following the incident, at least 7 independent radio operators vanished while attempting to locate the strange transmissions still coming from the mountain. One amateur investigator disappeared after uploading distorted audio recovered near the restricted zone. His final post online contained only one sentence: "It knows we are listening." The account was deleted hours later. Several hikers also reported hearing unusual sounds near the abandoned access roads leading toward the station. Voices inside the trees, metallic knocking beneath the snow, and on multiple occasions, emergency sirens echoing through the mountains, despite there being no active facilities anywhere nearby. In 1996, a former military communications officer agreed to speak anonymously about Black Ridge during a late-night radio interview. According to him, the station had not been studying weather patterns at all. It had been studying signals that appeared to originate from deep underground, signals that repeated human speech before it was spoken. The interview ended abruptly after the caller suddenly stopped talking mid-sentence. Moments later, the radio host claimed strange interference had completely taken over the broadcast equipment. The recording was never aired again. Years later, fragments of the lost interview surfaced online. Listeners noticed something terrifying hidden beneath the static: a faint rhythmic sound, like someone knocking slowly against a metal surface. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more knocks. The exact same pattern reportedly heard by workers inside Black Ridge Station shortly before the final transmission. Some believe the mountain contains a classified Cold War communications system that malfunctioned catastrophically. Others believe the tunnels beneath Black Ridge connect to something far older than any military operation, something buried long before the station was ever constructed. But one detail continues to disturb investigators more than anything else. When modern audio experts restored the final transmission using advanced AI enhancement software, they discovered something hidden beneath the screaming and static. A third voice, extremely faint, whispering the same sentence over and over again: "We are still down here." And according to the restoration logs, the voice did not come from the original recording itself. It appeared only after the audio was cleaned, as if something hidden beneath the signal had been waiting to be heard.